Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. On this channel, we discuss day-to-day problems people face in their lives. Let's start with the video. Sister-in-law who comes begging me and my wife to help out with her kids keeps expanding her field of authority in my household until I put an end to it. My in-laws family has recently witnessed one of its most striking tragedies, which was the passing of my sister-in-law's husband, are very young due to an incident and a mistake that he and a couple of his friends at work committed, in which I will not go too much into detail because even though I have little to no respect left for my sister-in-law, I will value the fact that she's genuinely considering going into a lawsuit against the company where he worked to get proper compensation for the fact that he passed away basically serving them. It was obviously, needless to say, extremely sad and depressing. And even though it brought the family back together in a way we hadn't witnessed in many months, at the end of the day, it would be a memory of somebody's passing, a husband, a son, and above all, somebody's dad. After the funeral was done and everybody took refuge to their homes and away from the gloomy and depressing atmosphere that had overthrown my parents-in-law's home and loomed over the family for many days as we all collectively stood by my sister-in-law's side and grieved with her passing of her husband that we all loved and cared and respected so much, my wife and I ended up doing the same very thing as we slithered our way out of my parents-in-law's home and into ours, which we thought would house and protect us from that vibe that we had grown to dislike in the funeral, regardless of the tender and caring emotions we carried out for my sister-in-law and her passing husband. I'm not going to lie to you and tell you that it didn't take me by surprise when my wife came up to me that following week to talk to me about something. And she said it was extremely serious and would go about detrimenting my affinity towards her family and my ability to be empathetic and caring and loving, and a very long list of introductions to whatever requests she had packed for me, and boy was she packing. She told me that her sister had been finding it very difficult to cope with living in a home that had very few people than the number she had gotten used to. Then she thought that coming to live with me and my children and my wife would make a process of getting accommodated to her newly inflicted loss a lot easier than it has to be, and that she would forever be grateful to me and my wife for making something that seems impossible to do a lot more achievable. Even my wife made it sound as though me making the decision of welcoming my sister-in-law into our home sounds like it would be the solution to multiple problems that we were facing in our marriage, and that it would only make for a great learning experience for our kids and blah, blah, blah. All I remember that's all surprise, I touched me to the core, and in a way that I genuinely felt like it connected to what my sister-in-law was feeling. And the intensity of the dislike severely and I had towards the emotions of possibly losing my wife is most likely what led me to agree to having her come stay with us, even though I was very well aware of her being the black sheep of the family and the problematic woman that people rarely grew to like. At first, she seemed very passionate, and her presence in our household seemed very least bothersome, as the only inconvenience, which is genuinely not even an inconvenience, was that she was taking up the gym room and I was having to buy a new gym subscription and commute an hour each morning for my day Kickstarter workout. I'm only saying this to compare to the gravity of the escalation of the situation because I was, and I would have been more than happy to remain burdened by my inability to work out in the comfort of my own home. She started escalating her requests bed by bedtime. Before we knew it, my wife and I were plotting on how to find a way to get her the hell out of our household and put an end to her toxic and manipulative and destructive behavior that she was transferring to our children. For example, in the first week, she was living with her kids in the gym room and taking up minimal space, which I appreciate quite a lot, as I'm a very private person and someone that really doesn't like change or unnecessary sacrifice. And so it was the perfect option for all of us. Or so I thought, because she asked to move out of the gym room herself and have my kids and hers stay in one room while she gets a room for herself, which I thought was reasonable to cater to, even though I knew that pulling all of the kids together in one room would be a lot less comfortable for the kids than it would have been if she agreed to keep things the way they were. But I also understood why she would feel the need to request that, as I wouldn't want to live all the time with my kids and still be forced to sleep with them at night. She then started talking shit to my wife in front of me, as if they were some high school teenage girls fighting over a skirt, and acting like there was no need to respect me or the authority I had in the house to silence arguments and disputes, especially in front of the children. As she was criticizing the way we were raising our kids and the way we behaved in front of other adults, even though our kids were obviously a lot more well behaved than hers could ever be. And slowly but surely, she started expanding the space in which she placed her things and roamed around most day and all night, from living with her kids to the gym room to asking us to get rid of our children's things so she could have more space to get a tad bit extra comfortable and cope with the passing of the love of her life, as her being rude about our decor and going to the extent of asking to renovate our home for us with our own budget would have anything to do with catching up the pain of losing a significant other. She started telling our kids how to and how not to act, as if she was entitled to anything more than handling her own problems and raising her own children who clearly needed a lot of guidance in their lives. And that's not me shitting on somebody else's children, especially knowing that their father is dead, but me questioning the true intent behind her walking around all day long, criticizing my children that were very impressionable and could easily be hurt and offended due to their childish and naturally sensitive and immature nature. The deal breaker for me was when she walked in on me and my wife trying to fall asleep in the middle of the night after a very long day of work, only to ask us if she could take our kids' bunk beds and disassemble it so she could have a double bed for herself and get extra comfortable in the gym room while our kids sleep on the couch cushions until we go out the following morning, and get other mattresses with our money. And the list goes on in a way that I could genuinely stay here all day before I'm even close to done. And on that note, I thank you for taking the time to read about my life sorrows that clearly don't compare to those of others. Update. I'm very surprised to hear all the overwhelming feedback that I got on the last post, but I want to finish what happened here, as many of you seem to be confused as to what happened following the day that I had enough of it, as I assumed the title gave away everything. But basically, I had enough of everything that has been happening and got up with barely two eyes open and shouted at her to get the hell out of my bedroom, and followed it up by getting the hell out of my house as soon as the morning is upon us, and that I would be taking no more of her shit and seeing no more of her face anywhere near my house, or I wouldn't hesitate to kick the shit out of my house. And although I can admit that I was a little bit too harsh on my behalf, I genuinely don't tolerate things from people, and she had exceeded my limit and boundaries a long ass time ago. And the only reason I put up with any of it was because I was terrified of my wife having to go through the same shit. But I'm pretty sure my wife would never be as annoying and controlling and self-imposing as my sister-in-law, especially if she was living in somebody else's house. Next story. I, 26 male, have a friend, Oliver. We briefly dated. He broke up because he figured he was straight, so we remained friends for the last 7 years. A few months ago, he began to hang out with some new people he met at work and started to date Lisa, 23, from said friend group. Recently, said friend group hung out at a bar and Oliver asked me to come along, which I agreed to. We spent the evening together, had a few drinks, had fun, until Lisa started to talk about a childhood friend of hers she recently reconnected with and told everyone with great disgust that he turned out to be gay. The others also had some opinions about that, and let's just say things were pretty ugly and disgusting against queer people and people of color. I really didn't want to deal with that bullshit, so I told everyone straightforward that I was gay and that what they were saying was derogatory, inhuman, and vile. At first, they thought I was joking because I'm straight looking and too masculine, but eventually the penny dropped, and after a few moments of embarrassment, they just continued, now directly targeting me. Oliver hadn't said anything. He had just laughed along until now, and as the banter started again, he chimed in and claimed that he had no idea I swing that way. I was baffled because, first of all, the two of us used to date. He knew every boyfriend I had in these past years and went to Pride with me and his bisexual sister, and now he was laughing at these insults. I snapped. Funny, thought that was clear, and told everyone the story of how we used to date. Silence. And then hell broke loose and I left. Oliver later called me and yelled at me that he needed me to tell his girlfriend that I had been joking and that we had never dated as she broke up with him because she needed a real man and not some S who F to F. He told me that he loved her and really liked her friends and he didn't want to lose any of them. I asked him whether he had lost his mind because these people were homophobic and racist and that I could not understand why he would even want to deal with them. He told me that I should have kept my mouth shut, and only because they have one flaw doesn't mean they're bad people. I asked him whether our friendship and his sister meant nothing to him, and he said that we mean the world to him and that he supports us, but he is still allowed to hang out with people who have other opinions. Then he said something that actually had me thinking why I might be the a-hole after all. He said that, first of all, I didn't have the right to out him, and that I don't have the right to choose whom he hangs out with just because I disagree with them and feel personally attacked and betrayed by him. Am I the a-hole? And should I lie to mend things between him and his girlfriend? Update. Oliver thought it was a smart idea to talk to his sister and ask her to talk to me to convince me to do the right thing. She is furious. She basically packed a few of her things and stormed out of the flat they share because she is not going to live under the same roof as a person who thinks homophobia and racism is an opinion that can be laughed at. Another update. His sister is at my place. We have beer, 2 very spoiled cats, movies, and a few missed calls and texts from Oliver, who is desperate to talk to us and who is apologizing for everything. Not the a-hole. I wouldn't normally be okay with putting someone on, but your friend was almost asking for it. What they and your friend were doing was awful. You were defending yourself. Your friend should have immediately shut the conversation down with the first homophobic comment that was made. Him saying he supposedly didn't know you weren't straight almost comes off as a dare to me. Your friend, X, is hanging out with people who, from their words, despise your existence and his sister's. He did nothing to defend you in front of them and is now asking you to lie to mend fences because he likes these reprehensible people. Ever seen Ozark? There was a story at the beginning of season 1 where Adele is telling a story of a lady who worked for his father for 15 years and was caught stealing and asks what his father should have done. Everyone says give her a second chance except Marty. It's not the first time she was stealing. It's the first time she was caught. I'll guarantee this was not their first time at the gay bashing rodeo. Cut your ties and move on. You're worth more than Oliver's so-called friendship. Not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. He said you have to be courteous of others' opinions and that you had no right to judge them based on that. Being homophobic and racist is not an opinion. It's directly going against someone's right to live and be happy. His friends, and him too by association, since it's especially not his call to make us a straight male, especially after his own history, are definitely the a-holes here. Hating someone just because you don't like the way they were born is an evil thing. Next story. My 16 female living situations are pretty chaotic. My parents are divorced and still live in the same town, but I don't like living with either of them. My mother married a guy with 2 kids, and they have 2 kids together. My father has young kids with his wife. It's noisy, and the kids get on my nerves. My parents expect me to babysit all the time if I'm around, and I just want to be alone. We live in an area with a lot of woods and abandoned farms, so I walk a lot to get out of the house and explore. I found the perfect hideout. It's an old storm shelter, or might have been a bomb shelter at one time. It's within a hike of both parents' houses, and no one seems to be around the area. So I've turned it into my own hangout. I'm interested in wilderness survival and DIY, so I made it really nice over the last year. I can go and read or craft or take a nap in peace. I can even cook simple stuff on a fire. I'm very safe and have had camping safety classes. I painted murals on the walls. I kind of wish I could live there sometimes. Things have been especially stressful at the homes with COVID. So I was spending a lot of time at my place, and my mom has been complaining that I'm not around. I fell asleep and ended up coming home late one day, and it turned into a big issue. My parents thought I was out doing drugs or having sex. I finally told them, I just have a place I go to be alone because they and their kids stress me out. That didn't go over well. My dad demanded to know where it was, and I refused to say. We're at a stalemate right now. They can't actually stop me from going there completely because they need me to be independent to be able to keep up with the other kids. All I have to do is wait till they get tired of doing the stuff that I can't do for them right now because I have to be supervised. I don't want them to ruin my spot by knowing where to find me and bother me. There's not a lot they can take away that matters enough to be a punishment. So I can see them getting frustrated. Am I the a hole? Edit. Thank you for the feedback, everyone. I didn't think my parents would listen, and I think they would lie and say they were okay with it and then change their minds afterwards, so I don't want to tell them. But I think my uncle would understand and keep the secret, so I'm going to talk to him and see if he would agree to be my adult contact person without telling my parents unless I go missing. Not the a hole, since people are aware. I do still think it is a risky endeavor, and you should put even more effort into staying safe. Times when you do reach out on your own, potentially a suggested burner phone. While I do not judge your parents for being worried about this, they chose not to rectify the base situation, driving you away in the first place. Please stay safe and check in with them regularly or your trusted person who knows about the hideout. It is rather difficult if this is a friend of the same age, but at least a teacher knows. Stay safe. Info. Dear, does anyone know where the spot is? Camping safety classes should include someone knowing where you are at all times in case something happens or you go missing. I get it's hard right now, but this seems understandably dangerous, and any parent would worry about their child spending days or nights in the woods alone. Not that they have to know, but someone does. Not the a hole. They're treating you like a babysitter since you're the oldest. And when you have a spot, you don't have to be stressed out by the children. They get mad. They should understand that the children are stressful and loud. They've experienced it before.